Hey guys, good morning. Welcome back to the channel. So for today's video, there's a specific reason, couple of them, why I'm in the Mini Cooper and not my Tesla Model 3. So before I get into that, I'd like to say welcome. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. If you've been watching for a while, this will be a little bit of a different one. Now, for those of you that don't know, my channel is primarily based around the life and times of owning a rear-wheel drive, long-range Tesla Model 3. My car is a 2018 model. I have 86,000 miles, 87,000 something on it right now, and I'm looking forward to hitting 100,000 miles before the end of the year. Anyway, that car is currently in at Tesla of Schaumburg, having the clunk from the rear end of the car addressed. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know a little bit about that. And is it fixed? No, but we have some interesting direction to go by, so I'll leave it at that. Sorry about the dirty windshield with the sun glare. A lot of bugs on the windshield today, but ignore that. Today we are going to discuss the flawed thinking of many journalists. Why do they look at things the way they do? So this video is being shot on September 1st. It's in response to an August 30th article that Motor Trend had posted online, entitled "The Secret Adjustment Factor That Tesla Uses." And it's an article that addresses, it's a pretty lengthy article, and it gets quite in depth. And actually, this is a little bit of a rebuttal to the article, but I would highly encourage you guys to read it because there's a lot of good technical information on it. And I want to thank the guys at Car and Driver for writing that article. Now, the article's subject matter is regarding range, and that's part of the reason I'm shooting this video in the Mini Cooper. Again, one reason is because I'm using this car for work for a few days while Schaumburg Tesla looks at my car, and which I'll be getting back this afternoon, by the way. I'm shooting a video separately on that. But number two, this is, well, by today's standards, it's a short-range EV. A few years ago standards, it would have been considered a mid-range EV. This car is rated at 110 miles of rated range. Now, I find that fascinating because people complain about EVs quoting too long a range, and you really don't achieve that in real life, whereas this car is rated at 110 miles of range, but when I drive it in our normal driving, it's more like 150 to 170 miles of range, and that's kind of that. It's something that I've observed that is people are mistaken about EVs in a number of ways. Now, this Car and Driver article, they get into all the EPA test cycle and that. But what that article starts off saying, Tesla and other EVs are rated at a certain range. However, in their own testing, and this is very early in the article, in our own testing at 75 miles per hour on the highway, we saw a 27% less range in our Tesla and 22% less range on average with other EVs at 75 miles per hour on the highway. Why is that? And I was reading the article with bated breath, waiting for them to answer the question, and they never addressed the real issue. They get into the EPA test cycle, which again is good stuff. Go ahead and read the article. However, this answer is so obvious, it's so simple, and I've talked about it over the years of having this channel, and yet pretty much no automotive reviewer really ever addresses it. There have been a handful of articles that have mentioned it, but here's the thing. They answered their own question in their statement. At 75 miles per hour on the expressway, they saw 27% range loss. This is the single biggest factor that you have to keep in your mind when you're buying an EV. And this is something that I've counseled many different people who have purchased EVs or plug-in hybrids or just normal hybrids, is that the highway versus in-town range is flipped versus a gas car. a normal gasoline-only powered vehicle will typically get better mileage on the expressway, especially a diesel. But normal gas cars are the same way. Then they do better range than they do in town. And you can look at the window sticker on this. You look at a certain vehicle and it will say something like 32 miles per gallon city, 41 on the highway, or 24 miles to the gallon city, 29 on the highway, or whatever. EVs are the reverse of that, and not only are they the reverse, they're the reverse and it's exaggerated. So for instance, with an EV, it may be something along the lines of the range around town is, I'll just use a made-up EV. Around town range, you may find that you're getting 200 miles of range, but on the highway, it's like 130. There is a radical difference. It's opposite. You have shorter range on the expressway than you do around town, but also it's more exaggerated. With a gas car, the difference between around town mileage and highway mileage is modest. It's modest. It might be 20% or something. But with an EV, it's more like 30%, 35%, maybe even as much as 40%, depending on how fast you're going. With gas cars, there's a given operating range, RPM and load, that a gas engine likes to see to hit its peak efficiency numbers. And that certain RPM and cylinder pressure and load is typically better suited for the highway. And around town, the engine is left to idle occasionally. Some of the modern cars have start-stop feature to minimize the idling, but they will still idle some. Whereas with an EV, if you're not moving, you're really not pulling power other than the normal idle, I hate to use the word idle current, but the normal just power to keep the systems powered up, but you're not moving the vehicle anywhere. You're not spinning an engine the way a gas car is when it's sitting at idle. And so with EVs are extremely efficient in throughout their operating range, the electric motor and the battery and the inverter and all that. With an EV, there are two main efficiency losses, and that is friction and drag. So when you're on the highway, you're pushing a lot more air and therefore you have lower range. Whereas again, with a gas car, on the highway, you're running the engine in its efficiency sweet spot and therefore you'll see better mileage, even though it's harder to push the car through the air. And this is something that it's absolutely infuriating for me that automotive journalists don't like to address this. And so I'll use my long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3 as an example. So that car is rated at 300, I think it's 325 miles. Well, they keep changing the rated range with different software updates, but a little over 300 miles of range, between 310 and 325 miles of range, depending on the specific Model 3 you have and what software update you're on. But that car, it's really not hard to achieve that range unless you're on the highway. If we're going state to state and I'm going 75 or 80 on the expressway, that 300 plus miles, 310, 315, whatever it is, miles of range is really more like, goodness, 220, something like that. It's a lot lower, but that's if you're on the expressway. And if you do research on this, commuters may be on the expressway a bit, but actually if you're commuting on the expressway, you're going to be in stop-and-go traffic for a bit. So you're really, the time you spend at 75 on the expressway, on the average, on the whole, for most people, is relatively low. Most people will average about 35 miles per hour through their day. Right now, I'm going 49 miles per hour. It's a 55 mile per hour speed zone, but the car's ahead of me. It's backed up, so they're not going 55. So, but then you're going 20 through town, then you're on the expressway for 75 miles per hour, then you're back in town going 25 or 30, but you're going to average a relatively modest speed. And in that average modest speed, the range does tend to work, the rated range versus what you'll see. And some cars are even better. Again, this car, the Mini Cooper SE, is rated at 110 miles of range, but my goodness, I think 140 was about the worst range we saw. Typically it's 150 to, we saw 177 miles of range, and that was not hypermiling it, and that was even using the AC. We just had no expressway miles on that charge at all. It was all around town. So it is infuriating, and it's something that I wanted to address. Now, if you're looking to get an EV, consider, do you do nearly all of your driving on the expressway? And some people do. A friend of mine does. It's not the norm, but some people do. Well, in your case, an EV, either it might not suit you, or you might be one of those people that, you know what, yeah, get an EV, but get one with a longer range than you're assuming, because if you're on the expressway a lot, the range will be lower. Now, an EV will still be far cheaper than a gas car to operate, even on the expressway with the lower range. So that's a factor as well. But it's something that I wanted to address here. If you, also, if you're, when you're shopping for a vehicle, if you're on the expressway a lot, even a diesel might suit you well. And I mean, I know a lot of people are going to hate me saying that because they don't want to see any tailpipe emissions, but there's, you know, for some people, certain vehicles will suit them. And so we have 3 EVs in our family because electric vehicles do suit us. We do happen to have one long-range EV in my 2018 Model 3, and we use that for state-to-state driving. But for some people, especially if your budget is tight, you know, you have to be careful what you purchase. But again, going back to the article, it was a wonderful article, but they missed the most obvious point, and that was that automotive journalists tend to hit the expressway and see what the range is. And also, many automotive journalists are in California, Southern California, where it's hot. So they hit the expressway, crank the air conditioning, and they'll say, well, this is real world, because people aren't going to hypermile their cars. This is real world. Real world is not expressway with the AC cranked all the time. I swear, it seems like automotive journalists do this just to make EVs look bad. And I know I'm painting with a broad brush there, and I'm probably passing judgment, and I shouldn't do that. Nevertheless, I do get that impression sometimes that EVs are perpetually behind the 8 ball from an automotive journalist judgment standpoint, and this article seems to be another one of those, and where it's basically, look, if you read between the lines, it's, hey, look, Tesla and other EV manufacturers are fudging the numbers. They're really not as good as they're saying. That's kind of the, I don't want to say that's the agenda behind the article, because I don't know, but there sure is a tone. That tone is there. So anyway, that's it for me for today. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I have, if you've noticed, there haven't been very many videos uploaded on my channel. I apologize for that. Those that have been uploaded have been more about the adjustable screen mount kits. I don't want this channel to be nothing but a rolling commercial, but it's just, I've been putting all my effort, all my spare time into packing and shipping orders, and I'm just packing and shipping and packing and shipping, and it's been wonderful, but it also means that my YouTube channel has suffered. So I also want to give a quick shout out to a number of the supercar channels out there. I'm not just into EVs, I'm a technical guy, I like cars. A lot of guys are buying these $1 million+ what they call hypercars, super exotic, fully carbon fiber $1 million+ cars. Congratulations to them. It's really a joy to see these guys excelling in the YouTube space. For me, YouTube is just a creative outlet. It's something I enjoy. I'm a communicator. It's not really a big revenue generator for me. Just makes a little bit of the financial blow from owning multiple cars more palatable, having my YouTube channel revenue. But for those guys that are making a full-time job at this and able to buy $1 million cars, it's actually pretty cool to see. It's nice to see YouTube growing in that regard. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below. And as always, stay charged.